The sky above was a deep shade of purple, with two suns slowly setting on the horizon. Ethan Carter sighed as he adjusted his backpack. His ship, the Wayfarer, was badly damaged, and he was stranded on this unknown planet. His emergency beacon was active, but rescue could take days, or even weeks. For now, he needed food, water, and shelter. Ethan had been a space explorer for years, so he knew how to survive. He had already found a small cave to rest in, but food was a bigger problem. His rations were running low, and he hadn't seen much edible plant life around. As he walked through the strange landscape, he noticed a movement in the distance. Something, or someone, was hiding behind the large red rocks. He wasn't alone. Slowly, he reached for his small energy pistol. He didn't want to fight, but he had to be careful. Then he heard a sound, a soft, weak whimper. Frowning, Ethan stepped forward and peered around the rock. What he saw made him freeze. There were two aliens, curled up together. They were humanoid in shape, but their skin had a shimmering blue hue, reflecting the light of the setting suns. Their eyes were large and bright, but their faces looked thin, too thin. Their bodies were trembling, and they looked hungry and exhausted. Ethan knew immediately. They were starving. His grip on the pistol loosened. These weren't predators or enemies. They were just two helpless beings in need. He slowly crouched down and pulled out one of his protein bars. It wasn't much, but it would help. Carefully, he unwrapped it and placed it on the ground, then stepped back. The aliens flinched at first, staring at him with wide, cautious eyes. But the smell of food seemed to overpower their fear. One of them, a slightly taller one, slowly reached out and picked up the bar. For a moment, they just held it, inspecting it with delicate fingers. Then, they broke it in half and gave a piece to the other. Ethan watched as they ate hungrily, their movements desperate but careful. He could tell they had no experience with solid food. They chewed awkwardly, as if they weren't used to the texture. When they finished, they looked at him again. Ethan smiled a little and pulled out another protein bar, placing it closer this time. The smaller alien hesitated for a moment before reaching out and taking it. Then, to his surprise, they both scooted a little closer to him. Ethan decided to break the silence. "Hey there, I'm Ethan," he said gently, tapping his chest. "Ethan." The taller alien tilted their head, then slowly copied the motion. "Zyra." The smaller one hesitated but then spoke as well. "Xylo." Ethan nodded, pleased. "Zyra." "Xylo. Nice to meet you." The aliens exchanged a glance then, as if making a decision. They moved even closer to him. Ethan wasn't sure what to make of it, but one thing was clear. They trusted him now. And somehow, that made him feel responsible for them. He sighed, glancing up at the darkening sky. He was already stranded and struggling to survive. Now, he had two aliens to take care of. "Well," he muttered to himself, standing up, "guess I just became a babysitter." Zyra and Xylo watched him, their glowing eyes filled with curiosity. And something else, something that looked a lot like attachment. Ethan sat by the small fire, watching the two alien twins, Zyra and Xylo, as they ate the last piece of his protein bar. Their thin fingers carefully held the food, and they chewed slowly, still getting used to the texture. He could tell they had been starving for a long time. The wind howled softly through the rocky landscape, carrying a cool breeze. The two suns had disappeared behind the horizon, leaving the sky dark, except for the faint glow of distant stars. Ethan sighed and leaned back. He had been on many planets before, met different alien species, but this was different. These two weren't just strangers. They depended on him now. Zyra and Xylo sat close to him, their large glowing eyes watching his every move. They seemed curious, studying him like he was something new and interesting. After a moment, Zyra spoke. "Ethan." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Yeah." Zyra hesitated, then pointed at the sky. "Ethan, home." Ethan followed her finger, looking up at the stars. He understood what she was asking. "Yeah," he said with a small smile. "My home is out there. A planet called Earth." Silo tilted his head. "Earth." Ethan nodded. "It's far from here. I was traveling in my ship, but it broke. Now, I'm stuck on this planet." The twins exchanged a look, then both moved even closer to him. Their species had smooth, shimmering skin, and they were warmer than he expected. They were seeking comfort. Ethan found it strange. Most aliens he had encountered before were cautious or aggressive towards humans at first, but Zyra and Silo seemed to trust him completely. "You two," Ethan started, trying to find the right words. "Why are you alone? Where is your family?" At first, neither of them answered. Then Zyra lowered her gaze. "Gone." Ethan frowned. "Gone." Silo nodded. "No more. No Villari." Villari. That must be their species. Ethan felt a pang of sadness in his chest. They were orphans, alone in a dangerous world, with no one to guide them. No wonder they had been starving. He sighed, rubbing the back of his head. "I see." A heavy silence followed. Ethan understood now why they were so attached to him. He was the first living being to show them kindness. "All right," he said after a moment. "If you want, you can stay with me." Zyra and Silo's eyes widened. Then, to his surprise, they both wrapped their arms around him in an awkward but warm embrace. Ethan stiffened. He had just been adopted. Learning to survive. The next morning, Ethan woke up to find Zyra and Silo curled up beside him, using his jacket as a blanket. He chuckled softly. They were acting like children. Stretching, he stood up and grabbed his backpack. They needed food, and soon. "All right, you two," he said. "Let's find something to eat." The twins followed him eagerly as he searched for edible plants and small creatures. Ethan had spent years learning about alien ecosystems, so he carefully examined the local flora. He found some purple fruits growing on a vine. He scanned them with his device. Safe to eat. He handed one to Zyra. "Here, try this." She sniffed it, then took a small bite. Her eyes lit up. She liked it. Silo quickly grabbed one and ate it even faster. He gave Ethan a big smile, his sharp teeth showing. Ethan laughed. "Slow down, buddy. We've got plenty." As they continued searching for food, Ethan noticed something interesting. Zyra and Silo were watching everything he did and copying him. When he picked up a rock to check for insects, they did the same. When he crouched to examine the soil, they followed. They were learning. Ethan realized something important. Their species wasn't weak or helpless. They simply lacked experience. They needed someone to teach them how to survive. And somehow, he had become their teacher. An unexpected attachment. By the time the sun was high, they had gathered enough food to last a few days. Ethan sat down on a rock, drinking some water. Zyra and Silo sat beside him, eating happily. Then Zyra spoke. "Ethan." "Anchor." Ethan blinked. "Anchor." Silo nodded. "You, our anchor." Ethan frowned. "What does that mean?" The twins exchanged a look. Then Zyra tapped his chest. "Ethan is strong. Ethan helps. Ethan stays." Silo smiled. "Anchor." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just trust. This was something deeper. He looked between them, realizing the truth. They had chosen him. For their species, an anchor must be someone they trusted completely. Someone they depended on, not just for survival, but for everything. Ethan rubbed his face. This was getting complicated. But when he looked at Zyra and Silo, their innocent, hopeful faces, he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't abandon them. With a sigh, he smiled. All right. I'll be your anchor." The twins cheered and hugged him again. Ethan chuckled. Yeah, I get it. You're happy. Now let's get back to the cave before something eats us." As they walked back, Ethan had a strange feeling. This planet was dangerous. His ship was still broken, and help was far away. But for the first time since crashing here, he wasn't alone anymore. And that meant everything. Ethan sat near the small fire, sharpening a piece of metal he had salvaged from his broken ship. The warmth flickered across the rocky walls of the cave. Outside, the twin moons of the planet hung in the sky, casting a soft blue glow over the land. Zira and Xylo sat close to him, their glowing eyes watching every move he made. "You two sure like staring at me, huh?" Ethan smirked, not looking up. Xylo tilted his head, learning. Zira nodded. "Ethan teaches. We remember." Ethan chuckled. "Yeah, well, I hope you're remembering more than just how to eat all my food." Zira and Xylo exchanged a glance, then suddenly grabbed some dried fruit from the pile and offered it to him. Ethan raised an eyebrow. They were trying to share. He took the fruit with a smile. "All right, I'll admit it, you two are pretty smart." The twins grinned, their sharp but small teeth reflecting the firelight. Strange but fascinating. Over the next few days, Ethan noticed more about Zira and Tylo. They were incredibly fast learners. Anything he did, they copied: how to build a fire, how to purify water, how to sharpen weapons. They were starting to act more human in small ways, but they were also different. Their skin shimmered like liquid metal under the light. Their movements were too smooth, almost unnatural, and their ability to communicate was improving way too fast. One night, as Ethan fixed his broken communicator, Zira touched his arm. "Ethan," she said softly. He looked up. "Yeah." Zira hesitated, then pointed to herself and Xylo. "We, not like you." Ethan blinked, surprised by the sudden statement. "Well, yeah, I figured that out already." Xylo shook his head. "No, we, different, not just body, inside." Ethan frowned. "Inside." Zira tapped her head. "Memory, knowledge." Velari learned fast, very fast. But she trailed off, struggling for words. Xylo finished the sentence. "We need others." Ethan stared at them. "Others? What do you mean?" Zira sighed. "Velari do not survive alone. We connect, share thoughts, knowledge, experience. Our people live together, learn together." Ethan's eyes widened. That explained a lot. Velari weren't just a species. They were a collective. Their strength didn't come from individual survival, but from shared knowledge. But Zira and Xylo, they had been separated from their kind for too long. They had no connection, no guidance. And now, they had chosen Ethan as their replacement. A shocking truth. Ethan took a deep breath, trying to process everything. "So, you two normally wouldn't survive alone." Zira and Xylo shook their heads. Xylo explained, "We are young, not full. Our minds, incomplete." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "Incomplete." Zira hesitated. Then, carefully, she placed a hand on Ethan's forehead. And suddenly, a flash of images. For a split second, Ethan saw things that weren't his memories. Strange glowing cities, thousands of Velari moving in perfect harmony, thoughts blending together like a massive living mind. Then the vision vanished. Ethan stumbled back, gasping. What the hell was that? Zira pulled her hand away, her eyes filled with worry. "I show you." Ethan rubbed his temple, still dizzy. "You mean, you can share memories?" Zira nodded. "Only small. We are not full Velari yet." Xylo added, "We need anchor, strong mind. We grow with anchor." Ethan's stomach twisted. He didn't like where this was going. "Wait. Hold on. What do you mean grow?" Zira and Xylo exchanged a look before Zira spoke softly. "We need a strong partner. We choose you." Ethan froze. His brain stopped working for a full 5 seconds. "You choose me. he repeated slowly. Silo nodded. Yes, Ethan is strong. Ethan protects. Ethan teaches. You are perfect. Ethan swallowed. Perfect for what? Zira smiled. To complete us. Ethan almost choked. A human among Villari. Ethan stood up, running a hand through his hair. This was insane. Okay, he said, trying to stay calm. Let me get this straight. You two aren't just learning from me. You're bonding with me. Like, permanently. Zura and Silo nodded. Ethan exhaled. And in your species, this bond is usually with another Villari. Again, they nodded. He shook his head. Then why me? I'm not Villari. Silo tilted his head. Villari choose best. Ethan is best. Ethan groaned. That's not how this works. Zira blinked. Why? Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no answer. Because really, why not? They were alone, lost, and in their minds, he wasn't just a friend. He was essential to their survival. Ethan sighed and sat back down. This is crazy. Zira and Silo crawled closer, their eyes filled with expectation. Ethan, Zira said softly, do you not like us? Ethan's chest tightened. That's not it. The truth was, he did like them. In just a few days, they had become his responsibility. His family. The thought scared him. But at the same time, it felt right. He rubbed his face and sighed. All right. Look, I don't know what this means for us, but I won't leave you. We'll figure this out. Together. The twins beamed with happiness and instantly hugged him. Ethan chuckled and muttered under his breath, I'm really in trouble now. And deep inside, he knew his life would never be the same again. Ethan sat on a flat rock outside the cave, staring up at the alien night sky. The two moons shone brightly, casting a soft glow over the rocky landscape. The cool breeze ruffled his jacket as he let out a deep sigh. Zira and Xylo sat beside him, their large glowing eyes fixed on his face. They were always watching, always learning. And now, they had chosen him. The memory of their words still echoed in his mind. We need anchor. We choose you. Ethan rubbed his temples. This was too much. He was just a guy trying to survive after his ship crashed. He didn't sign up to be some kind of lifelong guardian for two alien twins. But when he looked at them, so innocent, so hopeful, he knew he couldn't walk away. He was all they had, a hunter's lesson. The next morning, Ethan decided it was time to teach Zyra and Silo something important. Hunting. All right, you two, he said, holding up a sharp spear he had crafted. Food isn't always easy to find. Sometimes, you have to hunt. Zyra and Silo leaned forward, fascinated. Hunt. Zyra repeated. Ethan nodded. Yes. You track, you wait, and then you strike. Silo tilted his head, like predator. Ethan smirked. Exactly. He led them through the rocky terrain, moving quietly. He showed them how to step lightly, how to stay downwind so animals wouldn't smell them. Soon, they spotted a small rabbit-like creature drinking from a puddle. It had blue fur and 6 legs, its ears twitching at every tiny sound. Ethan crouched behind a rock, motioning for the twins to do the same. Watch, he whispered. He raised his spear, aimed carefully, and then threw. The spear struck perfectly, and the creature collapsed. Xylo's eyes widened. Zira gasped. They looked at Ethan like he had just performed magic. How? Zyra asked, amazed. Ethan chuckled. It's just skill. Now your turn. He pulled the spear out of the creature and handed it to Zyra. She hesitated, gripping it tightly. For the next hour, Ethan guided them. He showed them how to hold the spear, how to aim, how to predict where their target would move. At first, they missed every shot, but after a few tries, Zyra's spear finally hit its mark. She gasped, eyes glowing brighter. I did it. Silo jumped excitedly. Zara is hunter. Ethan grinned. Nice job. Now let's see if your brother can do it. Silo narrowed his eyes. Focused. He took his time, then threw the spear and missed. He frowned. Too fast. Ethan patted his shoulder. It's okay. You'll get better. Just keep practicing. Zira handed the spear back to Silo. Try again. Ethan watched as Tylo took a deep breath, aimed more carefully, and finally landed a hit. The look of pure joy on his face made Ethan laugh. Maybe these two really could survive on their own one day. The Valari's strength. As they walked back to the cave with their hunt, Ethan noticed something strange. Zira and Silo weren't tired. Hunting, running, and throwing the spear should have exhausted them. But instead, they seemed even more energetic than before. Ethan wiped sweat from his forehead. You two don't get tired. Zara tilted her head. Why tired? Silo grinned. Hunting is fun. Ethan chuckled. Yeah, it is. But normally, after a hunt, your body needs rest. Zara tapped her own chest. Valari. Adapt. We learn. We grow stronger. Ethan narrowed his eyes. So that was it. Not only did they learn fast, but their bodies adapted just as quickly. They weren't just copying him. They were becoming better with every new experience. Ethan sighed. You two are really something else. Silo beamed. Something good. Ethan smirked. Yeah, something good. A dangerous discovery. That night, after cooking their meal, Ethan leaned against the cave wall, feeling more at ease than before. Zyra and Xylo sat close to him, happily eating. But then, a distant howl echoed through the night. Ethan's muscles tensed. He recognized that sound. It was the same beast that had attacked his camp 2 nights ago. Zara and Xylo's eyes glowed brighter. They sensed it too. Ethan, Zyra whispered. Xylo stood up. It comes. Ethan grabbed his spear, his heart pounding. He wasn't alone anymore. This time, he had 2 hunters with him. He glanced at the twins. You ready? Zira gripped her spear. Ready. Xylo grinned. We fight together. Ethan smirked. Dan right we do. The 3 of them stood at the entrance of the cave, ready for the battle ahead. For the first time since crashing on this planet, Ethan didn't feel like a lone survivor. He felt like part of a pack. The distant howl echoed through the night again, this time closer. Ethan tightened his grip on his spear, his pulse quickening. Zyra and Silo stood beside him, their glowing eyes locked onto the darkness beyond the cave. The beast was coming. Ethan had seen it once before, a massive reptilian predator covered in thick, bony plates with sharp claws that could tear through rock. The first time, he had barely escaped, but this time, he wasn't alone. Zara and Tylo were with him. And for the first time, he wasn't just protecting them. They were protecting each other, preparing for the hunt. Ethan turned to the twins. All right, listen up. This thing is fast, strong, and smart. We can't fight it head-on. We need a plan. Silo nodded. We trap. Ethan smirked. That's exactly what I was thinking. He quickly grabbed a few sharp stones and some thick vines they had collected earlier. With Zira and Silo's help, he set up a simple but deadly trap, a pile of loose rocks balanced on a ledge above the entrance, ready to fall at the right moment. Ethan stepped back, wiping sweat from his forehead. If we can lure it right under there, we can bring those rocks down and crush it. Zira flexed her fingers. And if it does not die, Ethan grinned, then we fight. The twins grinned back. The hunter approaches. The air grew tense. The night was too quiet, except for the soft rustling of leaves. The beast was near. Then, a deep growl rumbled from the darkness. Ethan's body tensed. There it was. Slowly, the monstrous creature stepped into the moonlight. It was even bigger than he remembered. Its thick hide shimmered like polished metal, its yellow eyes scanning the cave. Its nostrils flared as it sniffed the air, searching. It had caught their scent. Ethan crouched behind a rock, whispering, "Wait for it." Not yet. Zara and Xylo stayed still, their eyes glowing with excitement. They weren't afraid. They were ready. The beast stepped closer, its claws scraping against the rocks. It let out a deep, hungry growl, then lunged. "Now," Ethan shouted. Xylo yanked the vine holding the rock pile in place. The stones tumbled down with a deafening crash, smashing into the creature's back. The beast roared in pain, stumbling forward, dazed but not dead. Zara leaped from her hiding spot. She was fast, faster than Ethan had ever seen. She darted under the beast's belly and slashed its leg with a sharp stone blade. The beast howled and swung its tail. "Zara, move!" Ethan yelled. She jumped back just in time as the tail smashed into the ground where she had been standing. Xylo sprinted forward, his spear aimed at the creature's eye. He threw it with perfect accuracy, but at the last moment, the beast jerked its head. The spear grazed its cheek instead. Ethan cursed under his breath. "Damn it. It's still too strong." The beast turned toward Xylo, snarling. It was going to charge. The alpha stance. Ethan didn't think. He moved. Gripping his own spear, he ran straight at the beast, shouting, "Hey, over here." The creature snapped its head toward him, eyes locking onto its new target. Ethan slid under it, narrowly dodging its claws, and drove his spear deep into its exposed belly. The beast screamed in pain, thrashing violently. Ethan held on, pushing the spear deeper. Suddenly, Zara and Xylo leaped onto the beast's back. They attacked in perfect sync, Zara slashing at its head, Xylo stabbing into its neck. Their teamwork was flawless, natural, like they had done this 100 times before. The beast staggered, blood spilling onto the rocky ground. Ethan pulled his spear free and delivered the final strike, driving it straight into the creature's heart. The beast let out a final gurgling growl, then collapsed. Silence. For a long moment, none of them moved. Then Ethan exhaled, falling back onto the ground. His arms felt like lead. His chest heaved. Zara and Xylo stood over the beast's lifeless body, their eyes burning with triumph. They had won. The pack's victory. Ethan sat up slowly, staring at the massive body before them. "Holy hell, we actually did it." Zara turned to him and smiled. "Ethan is strong." Xylo grinned. "We fight good together." Ethan let out a tired laugh. Yeah, we do." Zara and Xylo helped him to his feet. Their hands were warm, steady. Not just students anymore. Not just survivors. They were a pack. Ethan looked at them, really looked at them. He wasn't just teaching them. He wasn't just their protector. They were equals. And for the first time since he crashed on this planet, Ethan didn't feel alone anymore. A new beginning. As dawn broke over the horizon, the three of them sat on a high rock, watching the sunrise. Xylo suddenly spoke. "Ethan." "Yeah," Ethan said. Xylo hesitated. "Humans, half pack." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" Zara leaned forward. "You are alone. No others. No pack." Ethan's chest tightened. He had never really thought about it before, but they were right. He had no one. But now, as he looked at the twins, at their glowing eyes, their trust in him, he realized something. Maybe he wasn't alone anymore. Ethan smiled, ruffling their hair. "Nah, I have a pack now." Zara and Xylo beamed. For the first time, Ethan felt like he belonged. And deep down, he knew this was just the beginning. The morning sun painted the rocky landscape in shades of gold and orange. Ethan sat at the edge of the cave, sharpening his spear. Zara and Xylo sat beside him, watching with their usual curiosity. The remains of last night's battle still lay nearby. The giant beast's body, now attracting small scavengers. It was proof of their victory, proof that they had fought as one. Ethan glanced at the twins. They weren't the same helpless aliens he had met before. They were hunters now, survivors. But survival wasn't enough. He exhaled slowly. We need to build something more permanent. Zira tilted her head. Permanent. Xylo's eyes brightened. A home. Ethan nodded. Exactly. This cave is good, but it's not safe forever. If another beast comes, he pointed to the fallen creature. We might not be so lucky next time. Zira and Xylo exchanged a glance, then nodded in agreement. We build, Zira said firmly. Xylo grinned. A strong pack must have a strong den. Ethan smiled. They understood. The first stone. They spent the morning scouting for a new location. Ethan led the way, checking the terrain. We need a place with good cover, water nearby, and high ground for defense. Zira scanned the surroundings with her glowing eyes. There, she said, pointing to a rocky outcrop near a stream. Xylo sprinted ahead, testing the ground. Strong. No sink. Ethan grinned. All right, let's get to work. They started by gathering large stones to create a strong outer wall. Ethan used vines to bind smaller rocks together, reinforcing weak spots. Zira and Xylo, surprisingly strong for their size, carried heavy stones with ease. As they worked, Ethan noticed something. The twins weren't just helping. They were thinking. Zira studied how Ethan stacked the rocks, then adjusted her own method. Xylo tested the weight distribution, making sure the wall wouldn't collapse. They were learning. Fast. Ethan chuckled. You two are gonna outbuild me soon. Zira smirked. We learn from the best. Xylo puffed out his chest. We are pack. We build together. Ethan smiled. Yeah, they were a pack now. The fire of the future. As the sun began to set, their new shelter took shape, a sturdy stone structure, open at the top but enclosed enough to provide protection. Ethan built a fire pit in the center, carefully placing dry wood. Xylo watched closely. Why fire? Ethan struck two stones together, sending sparks into the dry leaves. Fire keeps us warm, cooks food, and scares away predators. The flames flickered to life, dancing in the twilight. Zira and Xylo stared, mesmerized. Fire is powerful, Zira whispered. Ethan nodded. Yeah, it's why humans survived. Xylo turned to him, eyes shining. And why we will survive too. Ethan smiled. They understood. That night, they sat around the fire, eating their meal. The stars above stretched endlessly, the air cool and peaceful. For the first time in a long while, Ethan felt safe. A visitor in the dark. The peace didn't last long. In the middle of the night, Ethan woke up to a strange noise. A low, rhythmic hum, almost like a pulse, echoed in the distance. He sat up, grabbing his spear. Zira and Xylo were already awake, their glowing eyes focused on the dark horizon. Something is coming, Zira whispered. Xylo sniffed the air. Not beast. Different. Ethan's pulse quickened. Another creature, or something worse. Slowly, he stood, motioning for the twins to stay low. Together, they crept toward the edge of their new shelter, scanning the landscape. Then, a shadow moved. Ethan's grip tightened. Stay close. The shadow grew larger, stepping into the moonlight. And then Ethan's breath caught in his throat. It was another Villari. A stranger, yet familiar. The alien stood taller than Zira and Xylo, its body lean and muscular. Its eyes glowed faintly, scanning them with a mixture of curiosity and caution. It was the first time Ethan had seen another of their kind. Zira and Xylo stared, their expressions unreadable. The stranger took a step closer, its voice low and unfamiliar. You are not Villari. Ethan tightened his grip on his spear. No, I'm human. The alien's eyes narrowed. Then why do you stand with our young? Zira suddenly stepped forward. Ethan is Pack. The stranger's glowing eyes flicked between Ethan and the twins. Pack. Silo nodded. He protects. He teaches. The stranger tilted its head, considering. Then it took another step forward. Ethan tensed. Who are you? The alien's eyes locked onto his. I am Lirak, a seeker of lost kin. Zira and Tylo gasped. Kin, Zyra whispered. Lirak nodded. I have searched long for others. I did not think I would find them with a human. Ethan crossed his arms. They were alone. I took care of them. Lirak studied him for a long moment, then finally said, Perhaps you are more than just human. Ethan frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Lirak didn't answer. Instead, he turned to Zira and Tylo. Come, your kind awaits. Silence. Ethan's heart sank. Zira and Silo had been alone for so long. Now if someone from their species had come for them, would they leave? Would they choose their own kind over him? Zira and Silo exchanged a look. Then, to Ethan's shock, they stepped closer to him. Zira spoke first. We stay. Silo nodded. Ethan is our pack. Lirak's eyes darkened. You would choose a human over your own blood. Silo growled softly. He is our blood now. Ethan swallowed, feeling a strange mix of relief and guilt. Lirak studied them, his expression unreadable. Then he simply said, We will see. Without another word, he turned and disappeared into the night. Ethan let out a slow breath. That was not the last time they would see him, and something told him this was only the beginning. The night air was thick with tension. Ethan stared into the darkness where Lirak had disappeared. Zyra and Silo stood close to him, their glowing eyes reflecting the firelight. Lirak's words echoed in Ethan's mind. We will see. He knew this wasn't over. Zyra and Silo had chosen to stay with him. But that didn't mean Lirak would accept it. If there were more Villari out there, what would they do? Would they try to take the twins away? Ethan tightened his grip on his spear. He wouldn't let that happen. Zyra suddenly placed a hand on his arm. Ethan, are you worried? He forced a small smile. Just thinking. Silo tilted his head. About what? Ethan exhaled. About what happens next. Zyra and Silo exchanged a glance, then nodded in understanding. They had felt alone for so long, but now they had found both Ethan and a member of their own kind. What if more came? What if they had to choose again? The arrival. Morning came faster than Ethan expected. He barely had time to prepare before the sound of approaching footsteps made him stand up, gripping his spear. Zyra and Silo tensed beside him. From beyond the trees, Lirak emerged, but he wasn't alone. Behind him, 4 more Villari stepped forward, their sleek, alien forms moving with silent grace. Their eyes glowed faintly in the morning light, scanning the surroundings with caution. Ethan's heart pounded. He had never seen so many before. The tallest among them, a female with dark blue markings on her skin, stepped forward. Her gaze landed on Zyra and Silo first, then on Ethan. You are the human. Her voice was calm, but there was power in it. Ethan nodded, keeping his expression neutral. Yeah, and you are. I am Vena, elder of our lost kin. She studied him for a long moment. Lirak says you have raised our young. Ethan crossed his arms. I took care of them when no one else did. Vena's gaze flickered to Zyra and Tylo. And now, they refuse to leave you. Zyra stepped forward. Ethan is our pack. Silo nodded. He teaches us, protects us. Vena sighed, her expression unreadable. This is unexpected. Ethan clenched his jaw. Were they going to force them to leave? Lirak spoke up. It is unnatural. They belong with us, not with a human. Silo growled softly. We belong where we choose. Ethan felt a small spark of pride at those words. They weren't afraid to stand up for themselves. Vena considered them, then turned back to Ethan. You have done something rare, human. You have made them see you as one of us. Ethan didn't know what to say. He had just helped them, protected them. Vena exhaled. I do not wish to take them by force, but I must ask, will you come with us? Ethan's eyes widened. What? Zura and Silo also looked shocked. Vena continued, you are part of their pack now. If they stay with us, so must you. Ethan's mind raced. Go with them. To where? To do what? He looked at Zyra and Tylo. They were watching him, waiting for his answer. They would follow his choice. Ethan took a deep breath. Where would we go? Vena gestured toward the horizon. To our home. Our true home. We are not just scattered survivors. We have a place. A city. Others like us. A city. Ethan hadn't expected that. He thought they were just a few lost aliens, but now. He looked at Zyra and Silo again. They had spent their whole lives alone. Until now. Maybe this was their chance to truly belong. Maybe it was his too. A new beginning. Ethan turned back to Vena and nodded. All right, we'll go with you. Zira and Xylo smiled brightly. Lirek, however, still looked doubtful. He is not Velari. Vena gave him a calm look. No, but he is their pack. Ethan smirked. I think that makes me close enough. Lirek sighed but said nothing. Vena gestured forward. Then come, human. It is time you see the world beyond this cave. Ethan took one last look at the shelter they had built. It had been a home, but it was not the end of their journey. Zura and Xylo walked beside him as they stepped forward, toward the unknown, toward a new future. They weren't alone anymore. They were a pack. And together, they would face whatever came next.